You know, one of the lessons that you get from the Old Testament is that when a leader fails, it affects everybody under his roof. Everybody I believe in this concept called the umbrella of protection, the umbrella of spiritual authority. That if the father fails as the spiritual leader of his home, then his family is going to be subject to satanic attacks they would not have been subject to had he stood right and been true and firm and strong for God and for right. If a national leader fails, then the nation is going to suffer because of his poor leadership, his poor moral character. You know, the whole book of 2 Samuel covers the kingship of David. And the first 10 chapters, you can call them David's victories. Then you can call 2 Samuel chapter 11 David's sin. And the rest of the book you can call David's defeats. How many of you were alive in the 1980s? Okay? Do you remember the condition that 8 years of Reagan left the nation in? Okay? Do you see the condition that 8 years of Obama have left the nation in? How does it compare in your sight? Does moral failure on the part of leadership affect the nation? Affect the culture? Obviously it does. And the same is true when a father sins in the home. When Achan sinned in Joshua chapter 7, the only one that got killed was Achan, right? No. The whole family. That's right. 36 soldiers were killed when they invaded Ai, and then, of course, his whole family. You think about the rebellion of Korah in Numbers chapter 16. The only one that the earth opened up and swallowed was just Korah himself, right? No. His whole family. A couple of weeks ago, Brother Bruce McAllister, he puts our signs up there on the marquee out there by the road. He had a sign up there that said something to the effect of, well, it was a quote. It was a quote from Exodus chapter 20. It said that the Lord visits the iniquities of the fathers to the third and the fourth generation. Well, I got an email from somebody driving by. They went on our website and they found how to contact me through email, and they sent an email saying, your sign is wrong. I'm thinking it's a Bible quote. What do you mean it's wrong? They said, your sign is wrong because it contradicts, and they started citing some verses they thought it contradicted. Well, I looked up the verses to see what on earth they were talking about. And the verses were saying things like, the parents shall not be put to death for the sins of the fathers, neither shall the fathers be put to death for the sins of the parents, but every man shall be put to death for his own sins. And I thought, well, yeah, that's true, but that's not what that verse out there is talking about. So I graciously wrote back and I said, I looked up the verses that you cited, and you're right. The Bible does teach that parents aren't put to death for the children, children for the parents. I said, but that verse that is a direct quote from 4 different places in the Bible is not talking about that. The verses you're talking about are talking about penalizing somebody for the sins of their parents or for the sins of their children. The verse on the sign is talking about the influence that parents have to even the third and the fourth generation, because that's about how many generations you can expect to live to have an influence over grandchildren, great-grandchildren. And I said, you're right. People are put to death for their own sins, but somebody that grows up in the home of a drunkard, somebody grows up in the home of a man that's got a short fuse and he's constantly popping off against other people in the family, it becomes no surprise to everybody in the community when the son starts having a short temper, starts throwing tantrums, getting into fight, and people will say, the apple didn't fall far from the tree. He's a chip. Everybody knows that. The sins of the fathers are visited, show up in the lives of their children to the third and the fourth generation. And the person wrote back and said, oh, okay, well, thank you for explaining it. I say that because I don't believe that when Achan sinned, his family was put to death just because Achan sinned. I think the Bible's pretty clear. Children don't get put to death just because their parent did something wrong. I believe that the children and the wife were put to death because they were complicit in Achan's crime. It's not like they were totally clueless what Dad was doing. When he came in with the wedge of gold and the goodly Babylonish garment, and he was bragging about it inside the quiet of their tent, saying, "Hey, wife, come look what I got out of Jericho there. Hey, kids, look at this. We got a head start on all the loot that we're going to get as we invade the land here." And they were thinking, "Oh, great, Dad. Here, we'll help you dig the hole to hide it." And they were party to it. That's why they were put to death, because they were complicit in what Daddy had done. His influence had affected them. Same with Korah, Dathan and Abiram. Their influence affected their children.